DeepL unveils real-time spoken translation with voice-to-voice. The Slator Index reveals a top-heavy $72.6 billion market reality check. Trend AI and Anthropic partner to lock down shadow workforce risks. Welcome to Localization.com, your daily dose of localization know-how. Let's get straight into the explosion of synchronous edge processing AI. It is everywhere. Just look at the massive enterprise deployments that DeepL Connect showcased over in Tokyo and Amsterdam. The verdict from those intense demos is stark. Asynchronous text translation is officially dead as the default. That whole routine where you receive a file, translate it, and send it back a week later is over. DeepL just shattered its old text-only reputation with the launch of voice-to-voice. We're talking real-time, synchronous communication in over 40 languages, including insanely complex high-context ones like Arabic, Tagalog, and Vietnamese, which are structurally a nightmare to handle synchronously. But here's the interesting part. What's driving all the major capital market moves right now isn't just the voice feature itself. It's the underlying architecture making it possible. Look at VoiceLine. They just secured a €10 million funding round specifically to expand their field team voice AI. Investors are betting heavily on the end of the language barrier in chaotic physical environments. Now, veteran project managers and linguists might roll their eyes and think, we've had dial-in remote interpreting forever. Isn't this just a fancier telephone? It is entirely different. Comparing these new systems to traditional remote interpreting is like comparing a clunky telegraph to a smartwatch. The critical concept we need to unlock here is edge processing. When you use a traditional cloud-based tool, your device is basically dumb. It just acts as a microphone. It captures your voice, bundles it into a data packet, and beams it up to some massive server farm in Virginia or Frankfurt. It takes a second or two, waiting for that server to process the translation, and then beams the translated packet back to you. That round trip creates a huge latency bottleneck. Plus, you need a flawless internet connection, which you never have in the field. Edge processing completely removes that journey. The AI computes natively on the physical microchip of the device itself. Zero latency, completely independent of Wi-Fi or cellular signals. Picture an offshore oil rig technician out in the North Sea. Howling winds, freezing rain, and massive machinery roaring. Total acoustic chaos. Suddenly, this tech spots an impending pressure valve failure. It's a life or death emergency. They need to communicate this instantly to a supply ship captain down below who only speaks rapid-fire Portuguese. You can't just call an 800 number in that scenario and wait for a remote interpreter to connect, explain offshore drilling terminology, and facilitate a three-way call. By the time they connect, the valve has already blown. The translation has to happen in milliseconds, natively on their headset, over the sound of the storm. That zero latency requirement is exactly why the Bexar County Sheriff's Office is testing Axon AI body cameras right now. The hardware has gotten so tiny and efficient that law enforcement can process nuanced, high-stakes linguistic de-escalation directly on the vest without needing dispatch. But there is always a catch. Enterprise buyers don't actually care if the translation is perfect in a quiet acoustic studio because my phone's voice assistant can't even understand me if the TV is on. The industry demands auditable proof that these tools survive the chaotic real world. That brings us to the benchmarking methodology Gladia just published for their Solaria model. They tested it openly against 8 different leading providers with total transparency about the mechanics, because transparency is the new competitive advantage. Buyers need to know it works when a highly stressed agricultural inspector is out in the field dictating complex crop blight details right next to a roaring combine harvester. The noise floor is massive. Gladia has to computationally separate the mechanical grinding of the harvester from the biological frequency of the inspector's voice. If it hallucinated a single word because of the engine noise, the whole agricultural report is corrupted. While edge communication handles the chaotic physical world, AI is completely redefining the virtual and media worlds too. The era of linear workflows is collapsing. DeepDub just rolled out their agentic dubbing coworker. We really need to clarify that term, agentic AI, because people throw it around like it just means a basic macro. Automated is not the same as agentic. A basic macro runs a script once. An agentic AI is a digital colleague that maintains state, meaning continuous logic and memory over time. It doesn't just do a task and forget it. It remembers the rules you set months ago. Imagine you're localizing a massive sci-fi animated series. The director decides one specific alien character speaks with a distinct melodic hum, but only when lying about their starship coordinates. Over a 50-episode arc across 10 different language dubs, managing that behavioral quirk manually is a nightmare. Humans will definitely forget to apply it in episode 42, but the agentic coworker remembers. It tracks that quirk across the entire production schedule and enforces the creative continuity automatically. This virtualization is destroying geographic constraints too. Just look at the Vizard AI Keyer for XR and VR studios. It is completely eliminating the need for green screens by using dynamic human shape recognition. Imagine a financial anchor streaming from their incredibly cluttered basement in Chicago. The AI isolates their body perfectly in real time and seamlessly drops them into a hyper-realistic, localized trading floor simulation in Frankfurt for a German broadcast. The viewer sees $1 million studio, but it's literally just a guy in a Chicago basement. The role of the actual linguist is totally changing. The Prozee Expo AI discussions showed how post-editing workflows are entirely different now. Instead of traditional machine translation post-editing, where linguists act like janitors cleaning up bad raw AI output, linguists now use browser assistants, where the AI proactively pre-processes brand terminology before the human even looks at the segment. The linguist is now an orchestra conductor, guiding the nuance. This changes how we structure content. The PO Editor Masterclass Guide on Modular Content Design brilliantly advises us to stop translating monolithic books and start translating modules, like Lego blocks. Break a sprawling global HR policy into localized blocks that dynamically assemble based on the user. If an employee logs in from Texas, the system pulls regional labor law modules for Texas. From Berlin, it pulls EU compliance blocks. You translate the block once, but deploy it dynamically 1,000,000 times. But you have to be embedded from the beginning. Musai Studio made this exact point about game script adaptation. You can't just run an LLM on a raw spreadsheet of game dialogue. Imagine a cinematic stealth video game where a character is clinging to the underside of a moving train, urgently shouting localized dialogue over the wind. The animation loop for that sequence is strictly constrained to 2.3 seconds before they jump. An LLM has no spatial awareness. It doesn't know the character is upside down, and it doesn't know it only has 2.3 seconds to fit Japanese syllables into the mouth animation. It requires deep human creative adaptation to tune the reality. Which brings us to Generative Engine Optimization, or GO. The partnership between creative words and web visibility proves this is the most vital new skill of the decade. Standard SEO is dying. SEO was about tricking a crawler to rank your blue link. GEO is about ensuring your brand's multilingual metadata is structured so perfectly that an AI chatbot, which synthesizes a single definitive answer, natively understands your authority. If a CTO in Seoul asks an enterprise AI for the most reliable cybersecurity platform, the AI synthesizes a recommendation in Korean. GEO ensures it recommends your brand natively, rather than hallucinating a local competitor. The Localization Pro is literally tuning the AI's global perception of the company. Before we get into the final takeaways, just a reminder that you can find more practical insights and stay ahead of the curve at locanuku.com. When we synthesize all of this, the thread is clear, but the evolution is incredible. The industry has irreversibly morphed. We aren't just a text translation factory anymore. We have become the foundational architecture of secure, sovereign, and persistent AI global infrastructure. The technology provides mind-blowing velocity, like DeepL's edge processing, but the human professionals provide the absolute validity, security, and diplomatic nuance required to actually function safely in the world. As discussed at the CIOL conference in London, mapping out AI ethics, if an AI gets terminology drift during a fast-moving wildfire and hallucinates the word left instead of right, you just directed fleeing citizens straight into the blaze. At the ESI show in Toronto today, We see the exact same need for complex calibrations of advanced robotic hair transplant machines. You do not want an LLM guessing the voltage on a medical laser. Human-led verification is a safety mandate. And that's your daily dose of localization know-how from Localization.com, localization news you can use. The market is actively rewarding this end-to-end integration. Global Comics acquiring Inkar is scaling multilingual manga pipelines by owning the entire infrastructural stack. That's why operations like that are taking home the EZDocuAI Hermes Awards for 2026. It's a golden age for media localization, but only for the companies controlling the infrastructure. Because all this tech requires massive capital, the mid-market is currently bleeding. Let's look at the economic squeeze. The 2026 Slator Index revenue trends are grim for mid-size agencies, and the NIMSY 100 just confirmed it. We're looking at a $72.6 billion global market, but it is insanely top-heavy with total consolidation. The macroeconomic panic is very real. The IMF Europe just projected a sluggish 1.1% growth alongside incredibly high inflation. European procurement departments are panicking, telling localization managers their budgets are slashed, but double the volume is needed. Mid-market agencies can't survive that math using the old models. So, what is the survival pivot? Data for AI services. That is the only way out. Think of it like a gold rush. The old agencies were panning for gold flakes, getting paid per word for translation. Today, the smart agencies have pivoted to manufacturing the pickaxes and drawing the geological maps, selling those directly to the massive AI tech giants. This perfectly explains the strategic partnership between RWS and Cohere. RWS isn't just selling translation. They are actively embedding large language models directly into enterprise tech stacks, using their highly curated translation memories. For those newer to the technical side, a translation memory, or TM, is simply a database of previously approved human translations that ensures brand consistency and trains these engines to speak the highly specific corporate vernacular of a client. But is the market hollowing out? A massive investigative report from the Japan Times argues companies are bypassing human review entirely to save money. Well, it depends on the content. Take an automated weather anomaly alert. If there's a sudden microcell storm, you need to push a localized warning to mobile phones in 12 regional dialects instantly. Or real-time commodity pricing updates that expire in 45 seconds. That is pure human-free commodity content. You don't need a human linguist reviewing a push notification that is irrelevant a minute later. However, using that exact same automated process for high-stakes enterprise data is a disaster. Pronto Translations just released an incredible report mapping out the exact limits of AI, coining two vital concepts: stylistic flattening and terminology drift. Stylistic flattening happens when a brand, say a cheeky, rebellious, youth-focused energy drink with highly localized slang, feeds its wild marketing copy into an LLM to save budget. The AI naturally sands off all the cultural edges, outputting a sterile, highly grammatical corporate press release. It completely kills the brand voice. Terminology drift is even more dangerous. This is when the AI's context window basically fatigues. Imagine a massive 500-page localized nuclear reactor maintenance manual. On page 1, the AI learns the specific term for a boron cooling rod. But by page 300, its memory buffer is saturated. It forgets the established glossary and starts hallucinating generic translations. Suddenly, on page 301, a boron cooling rod becomes a chili stick or a temperature pipe. If an engineer follows that manual, it's a catastrophic liability. Security is the only thing procurement cares about right now. Trend AI and Anthropic just announced a partnership to lock down shadow workforce risks. The shadow workforce is terrifying. Picture a tired freelance medical reviewer working on highly sensitive, unreleased patient trial data under strict NDA. They lazily copy-paste a tricky paragraph into a public consumer-grade chatbot for a quick translation, instantly leaking clinical data into a public LLM training pool. Trend AI and Anthropic's Claude Mythos models are building walled gardens to prevent exactly that. EZDocuAI is taking it further with zero retention processing. This means the system never actually writes the data to a hard drive. It processes exclusively in temporary memory and physically purges it. Think about a bustling port scanning hastily handwritten, water-damaged customs declarations. The OCR reads the smudged ink, translates the sensitive logistics data in milliseconds, and then the digital vault self-destructs. No memory retained anywhere. This ties directly into the EU Cloud Sovereignty Framework, the SEAL framework. The EU awarded contracts to Scaleway and OVH Cloud because if an AI's infrastructure isn't technologically immune to non-EU supply chains, you cannot bid on government contracts. Period. The geopolitics of this are massive. At the Boao Forum, they published a multilingual book detailing the strategic policies of the Hainan Free Trade Port, deliberately translated into English and Russian as a targeted funnel for foreign direct investment. This is localization as diplomacy, a high-stakes weapon for state-led transcreation where you are directing global capital flows. This brings us to how human strategy is engineering solutions to these massive structural shifts. Platforms like Prose, PoEditor, and Musai Studio are automating the friction out of old linear workflows. RWS Trados is aggressively pushing concurrent editing. Instead of the slow assembly line where one person locks a file and hands it off, you have simultaneous access. Imagine a highly complex 3D MRI diagnostic file. With concurrent editing, multiple specialized neurological surgeons across different continents can log in simultaneously, annotating and translating the spatial UI in real time, with the system dynamically resolving conflicts. Phrase v26.7 is doing the exact same thing with their infrastructure updates. Interpreters Unlimited is deploying AI assistance for logistics, completely evaporating the administrative bottlenecks of scheduling.